The phone was ringing. I knew, even before I opened my eyes, that it wasn't a good sound. No one calls at 2:17 in the morning with good news. No one calls at that hour unless someone is dying, or dead, or something worse than dead. My hand found the receiver in the dark. The room was spinning, or maybe I was spinning, or maybe the whole world had tilted on its axis 30 years ago and never quite righted itself. Hello? Is this Margaret Chen? A woman's voice. Professional. Careful. The kind of careful that means she's been trained to deliver bad news, or impossible news, or news that doesn't make sense. Yes. Miss Chen. My name is Dr. Patricia Okonkwo. I'm calling from the Clearwater Recovery Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm so sorry to call at this hour, but we have a situation that requires immediate attention. Albuquerque. I'd never been to Albuquerque. Didn't know anyone in Albuquerque. My mind was sluggish, trying to make connections that weren't there. I think you have the wrong person, I said. You're Margaret Chen? Maiden name Sullivan? Born in Portland, Oregon, April 1963? Yes, but... And you had a son, Thomas Ryan Chen, born February 14th, 1987. The room stopped spinning. Everything stopped. My heart, my breath, the rotation of the earth. Had, I whispered. I had a son. Miss Chen, I need you to listen to me very carefully. 3 days ago, a man was admitted to our facility. He's been homeless for most of his adult life, struggling with substance abuse and severe PTSD. He has no identification, no memory of his childhood before age 9 or 10. He's been in and out of the system for years, and this is his 4th time in our program. I don't understand what this has to do with... He has a tattoo, a very distinctive tattoo on his left shoulder blade. It's not professionally done, looks like it was done in childhood, maybe with a sewing needle and ink. It's a small origami crane, and underneath it, in a child's handwriting, are the initials T.R.C. I couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, couldn't think. Miss Chen, are you still there? Thomas drowned, I said. My voice sounded far away, like it was coming from underwater. He drowned 30 years ago, in Lake Oswego. We found his body. We buried him. There was a pause, a long pause, the kind of pause that comes before someone says something that will change your life. Miss Chen, we ran his DNA through the national database as part of our standard intake procedure. We do that for all John Doe patients. The system flagged a potential familial match, a very strong match. 2. A missing persons case from 1995. Your son's case. That's not possible. I know this must be. It's not possible. We buried him. His name is on a headstone in Riverwood Cemetery. I put flowers there every year on his birthday, on the anniversary, on Christmas. I've been putting flowers on my son's grave for 30 years. Miss Chen, I know this is overwhelming, but I need to ask you something. The tattoo, the origami crane, does that mean anything to you? My eyes were closed, but I could see it anyway. Thomas, 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of colored paper, his tongue poking out the corner of his mouth the way it always did when he was concentrating, his small fingers folding, creasing, unfolding, trying again. He was learning origami, I heard myself say, from a library book. He couldn't get most of them right, but he could do the crane. He must have made 100 cranes that summer. He was so proud of them. Miss Chen, I think you need to come to Albuquerque. I sat up in bed. The alarm clock glowed red in the darkness. 2:23. Who is he? I asked. What's his name? What does he call himself? He goes by River. Just River. He doesn't remember his real name. He doesn't remember anything from before he was 9 or 10 years old. But Miss Chen, there's something else. Something that made us call you tonight. instead of waiting until morning. About an hour ago, he woke up from a nightmare. He was screaming. When the night staff calmed him down, he said something. He said he remembered a song, a woman singing, something about moonlight and roses. The world tilted again. "Moonlight and roses," I whispered. "Moonlight and roses." "You know it?" It was my grandmother's favorite song. She used to sing it to me when I was little. I sang it to Thomas every night before bed, every single night, even when he said he was too old for lullabies. Even the last night, before we went to the lake. I was crying now. I didn't remember starting to cry, but my face was wet and my hands were shaking and I couldn't stop. "Miss Chen, I can't promise you anything. I can't tell you that this man is your son, but I think you need to come here. I think you need to see him." "I'll be there," I said. "I'll be on the first flight out." After I hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. I thought about calling someone, my sister, my ex-husband, anyone. But what would I say? How do you tell someone that the child you buried 30 years ago might be alive? How do you say those words out loud without sounding insane? I got up, got dressed, booked a flight on my phone. Portland to Albuquerque, departing at 6:45. I'd have to leave for the airport in 3 hours. I went downstairs, made coffee, sat at the kitchen table and stared at nothing. The kitchen table where Thomas had folded his origami cranes. The kitchen table where I'd made him lemon bars every Sunday because they were his favorite. The kitchen table where I'd sat 30 years ago while police officers explained to me that they'd found a body in the lake, a boy's body, the right age, the right size, the right description. Wearing Thomas's swim trunks, wearing the blue and white striped shirt I'd bought him just 2 weeks before. I'd identified the body, or I thought I had. It was so damaged, so swollen from the water, but it was the right size, the right hair color, and he was wearing Thomas's clothes. They told me it happened sometimes, with drowning victims. The body gets caught in debris underwater, doesn't surface right away. They'd been searching the lake for 3 days before they found him. I believed them. Why wouldn't I? He was wearing my son's clothes. He was the right age. We'd been to the lake. Thomas had been swimming, and then he was gone. What else was I supposed to think? We had a funeral, a burial. My mother-in-law insisted on an open casket. I said no. I said absolutely not. We compromised on a closed casket with a photo on top. Thomas's school picture from that year. He was smiling, showing the gap where his 2 front teeth used to be. I'd been staring at that photo for 30 years. The coffee finished brewing. I poured a cup, but I didn't drink it. I just held it, feeling the warmth against my palms, and I thought about things I hadn't let myself think about in 3 decades. I thought about the day at the lake, June 23rd, 1995, Thomas's last day. We'd gone with another family, the Kowalskis. They had a son, Marcus, who was Thomas's best friend. Same age, same grade at school. The boys were inseparable. They'd been planning this lake trip for weeks. It was supposed to be a perfect day. The weather was beautiful. The water was calm. Both boys were good swimmers. We'd even bought them matching blue and white swim shirts, the kind with UV protection. I remembered setting up our spot on the beach. I remembered slathering sunscreen on Thomas's shoulders. I remembered him and Marcus running toward the water, laughing, racing each other. I remembered turning away to get the sandwiches out of the cooler. I remembered the silence. Not a scream, not a shout, just silence, the absence of children's laughter. I remembered running to the water. I remembered Diane Kowalski screaming Marcus's name. I remembered diving, searching, finding nothing but murky water and weeds. I remembered the rescue team arriving, the divers, the boats, the search that lasted for 3 days. I remembered them finding one body. Only one. We'd all assumed it was Thomas because he was wearing the blue and white shirt. The Kowalskis kept searching for Marcus. For weeks, for months. But they never found him. Eventually, they moved away. I heard through mutual friends that Diane had a nervous breakdown, that the marriage didn't survive, that they'd gotten divorced, both of them broken beyond repair. I hadn't thought about the Kowalskis in years. I'd pushed them out of my mind along with everything else from that day. But now, sitting at my kitchen table at 3 a.m, I thought about them. I thought about Diane Kowalski screaming her son's name. I thought about how they never found Marcus's body. I thought about a boy in a blue and white shirt. My phone buzzed. A text from the airline. My boarding pass. Seat 14A, Portland to Albuquerque. I finished my coffee. Went upstairs, packed a small bag. I didn't know how long I'd be gone. I didn't know what I'd find when I got there. I pulled a photo album from the shelf in my closet. The old-fashioned kind, with plastic sleeves and sticky pages. I hadn't looked at it in probably 10 years, maybe longer. I opened it. Thomas at 2 years old, covered in spaghetti sauce. Thomas at 4, dressed as a dinosaur for Halloween. Thomas at 6, missing his front teeth, holding up a drawing he'd made of our cat. Thomas at 7, sitting at this kitchen table, holding an origami crane. I stared at that photo for a long time. His face was so clear, so perfect. How could I have forgotten? How could I have mistaken another child's body for his? But it had been so damaged, so swollen, and he was wearing Thomas's clothes. The authorities were certain. The dental records were inconclusive because both boys had lost most of their baby teeth, and the body had been in the water too long. DNA testing existed in 1995, but it wasn't standard procedure, especially when the identification seemed obvious. I'd been so sure. We'd all been so sure. I took the photo of 7-year-old Thomas out of the album and slipped it into my purse. The flight was only 3 hours, but it felt like days. I couldn't sleep, couldn't read, couldn't focus on anything except the thoughts circling my brain like vultures. What if it was really him? What if I'd buried someone else's child and spent 30 years mourning while my son was alive, lost, struggling, homeless? What if I'd failed him in every possible way? The plane landed in Albuquerque at 9:45 Mountain Time. I'd lost 2 hours to time zones. It felt appropriate somehow. Time was meaningless now. The past and present were bleeding together. Dr. Okonkwo had offered to send someone to pick me up from the airport. I said no. I rented a car. I needed the time, needed to think, needed to breathe. The Clearwater Recovery Center was on the outskirts of the city, a low-slung building that looked more like a school than a hospital. The walls were painted a warm terracotta color. There were gardens, benches, a basketball hoop. It looked hopeful. It looked like a place where people might get better. Dr. Okonkwo met me in the lobby. She was younger than I'd expected from her voice on the phone, maybe 40. She had kind eyes and she shook my hand with both of hers, holding on for an extra moment. Miss Chen, thank you for coming so quickly. Is he? I couldn't finish the sentence. Didn't know how to finish it. He's in the common room. He doesn't know you're here. I thought we should talk first. She led me to a small office. We sat. She poured me water from a pitcher on her desk. I didn't drink it. I need you to understand something, she said. This man has been through significant trauma. His memory before age 9 or 10 is almost completely gone. What he does remember comes in fragments, usually triggered by something specific. A smell, a sound, a particular type of light. The song, I said. He remembered the song. Yes. He woke up from a nightmare and the song was in his head. He said he could hear a woman singing it. He said it made him feel safe. My eyes were stinging. I blinked hard. We've done a preliminary DNA test, Dr. Okonkwo continued. We took a sample from him and we're comparing it to the DNA from the missing persons database. But those results won't be back for a few days. So right now, All we have are the tattoo, the song, and the fact that he's the right age and general description. Can I see him? Yes. But Miss Chen, you need to prepare yourself. Even if this is your son, he's not the boy you remember. He's a 38-year-old man who spent most of his life on the streets. He's been through things I can't even imagine. The trauma, the substance abuse, the PTSD. He's fragile right now. Vulnerable. I understand. Do you? She leaned forward. Because if this is your son, and you react with horror or disappointment or anything that makes him feel rejected, it could destroy him. He's built up walls to protect himself. He's learned not to trust, not to hope. If you're going to do this, you need to be all in, no matter what. I thought about Thomas, 7 years old, showing me his origami crane. I thought about all the years I'd missed, all the birthdays, the Christmases, the ordinary days, all the moments he'd been out there, alone, suffering, while I put flowers on someone else's grave. I'm all in, I said. The common room was large and bright, with big windows overlooking the garden. There were couches, bookshelves, a TV that no one was watching. A few people sat scattered around the room, reading or playing cards or just staring into space. Dr. Okonkwo pointed to a man sitting alone in the corner by the window. He was thin, too thin. His hair was long and dark, pulled back in a ponytail that hung halfway down his back. He had a beard, unkempt and streaked with gray. He was wearing jeans and a faded green t-shirt. He was staring out the window, his back to us. That's him, Dr. Okonkwo said softly. That's River. We walked across the room. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone must be able to hear it. River? Dr. Okonkwo said gently. There's someone here to see you. He turned around. I stopped breathing. He had Thomas's eyes. Not the same color exactly, but the same shape, the same way of looking at the world, like he was seeing something the rest of us couldn't see. He had Thomas's nose, the same slight crook where he'd broken it falling off his bike when he was 6. He had Thomas's hands, long fingers, a thumb that bent back at an odd angle, but the face was wrong, too thin, too worn, lines around the eyes and mouth that spoke of pain and fear and years of living rough. Hi, he said. His voice was quiet, uncertain. Do I know you? I don't know, I said. My voice was shaking. Maybe, a long time ago. Dr. Okonkwo pulled up 2 chairs. We sat. River stayed on the couch, hunched forward, his hands clasped between his knees. River, this is Margaret Chen, Dr. Okonkwo said. We called her because we thought there might be a connection between the two of you. He looked at me, really looked at me. His eyes scanned my face like he was searching for something. I'm sorry, he said. I don't remember you. That's okay, I said. Though it wasn't okay. It was the opposite of okay. It was devastating. Dr. Okonkwo told me about your memory, about what happened. Yeah, he rubbed his hands over his face. It's like there's this wall. Everything before I was 9 or 10 is just gone. I get flashes sometimes, little pieces, but I can't hold on to them. They slip away. Can you tell me about the tattoo? I asked. The crane on your shoulder? He reached back and touched his shoulder blade through his shirt. I don't remember getting it. It's just always been there. I used to think maybe it meant something. Maybe it was from before, from when I had a family or whatever. But I don't know. And the song? My voice was barely above a whisper. The song you remembered? His eyes filled with tears. I don't know the name of it. I don't know the words, really. But I woke up and it was in my head and I could hear it so clearly. A woman singing. And I felt, he stopped, swallowed hard. I felt safe, like for just a second, I wasn't alone. I reached into my purse, pulled out the photo, handed it to him. This was my son, I said. His name was Thomas. Thomas Ryan Chen. He was 8 years old when he died. Or when I thought he died. That was 30 years ago. River took the photo with shaking hands. He stared at it for a long time. He's making something, he said. Paper folding. Origami, I said. He was learning origami. He loved making cranes. River looked up at me. His face had gone pale. I remember paper, he said slowly. Colored paper. I remember folding it. I remember being so frustrated because I couldn't get it right. But there was one thing I could do, one thing that worked. A crane, I whispered. A crane. He touched the photo, his finger tracing the outline of the boy's face. He looks like someone I might have been. Doctor, Okonkwo said, you've been calling yourself River. Yeah. I don't know why. It's just the name that felt right when people asked, like maybe it meant something, but I couldn't remember what. Thomas drowned in a river, I said. My throat was tight. Lake Oswego. It's technically a lake, but there's a river that feeds into it. That's where you disappeared. He was still staring at the photo. Tell me about him, he said. Tell me about Thomas. So I did. I told him about the gap between his front teeth, about how he loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist when he grew up, about how he couldn't tie his shoes until he was 7 and even then he'd trip over his laces constantly. I told him about the origami phase, about the lemon bars I made every Sunday, about how he was allergic to strawberries but would eat them anyway because he loved them so much. I told him about his best friend Marcus, about the blue and white striped swim shirts, about the last day at the lake. We never found Marcus's body, I said. Just one boy, wearing Thomas's clothes. We thought it was Thomas. The Kowalskis kept searching, but they never found their son. River's hands were gripping the photo so tightly his knuckles were white. There were 2 of us, he said. In the water. I remember now. There were 2 of us and we went under and it was dark and cold and I couldn't breathe. I remember hands pulling me down, weeds wrapping around my legs. I remember breaking free and swimming up and gasping for air. You survived, I said. But he didn't. River's voice broke. Marcus didn't. You were 8 years old. You nearly died. It wasn't your fault. I've been River all this time, he said. I've been carrying that day with me, without even knowing it. Dr. Okonkwo stood up quietly. I'll give you 2 some privacy, she said, and left. River and I sat in silence for a while. I watched him study the photo, watched him touch his shoulder blade where the tattoo was, watched him cry. I don't remember you, he finally said. I'm sorry. I don't remember your face or your voice or anything. But when you talk about making lemon bars, I can almost taste them. And when you talk about the song, I can almost hear it. That's a start, I said. Is it? Because I don't know how to be your son. I don't know how to be Thomas. I'm just River. I'm just this broken person who's been living in tents and shelters and under bridges. I'm not the boy in that picture. I don't need you to be, I said. I need you to be whoever you are now. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for just a second, I saw Thomas in his eyes. Not the 7-year-old from the photo, but the person Thomas might have become. The person he was, underneath all the pain and trauma and years. Can I ask you something? He said. Anything. Will you sing it for me? The song? So I did. Right there in the common room of the Clearwater Recovery Center, with other patients pretending not to listen and afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows, I sang Moonlight and Roses. I sang it the way my grandmother had sung it to me, the way I'd sung it to Thomas every night before bed, softly, slowly, like a prayer. When I finished, River was sobbing. Not quiet tears, but deep, wrenching sobs that shook his whole body. I moved to the couch and put my arms around him, and he collapsed against me like a child. Like the child he'd been, like the child he still was, somewhere inside. I remember, he whispered. I remember that song. I remember you singing it. I remember feeling safe. You are safe, I said. You're safe now. We sat like that for a long time. Eventually, his crying subsided. He pulled back, wiping his face with his hands. I'm sorry, he said. I'm a mess. You're my son, I said. You're allowed to be a mess. The DNA results came back 4 days later. 99.97% match. Thomas Ryan Chen, declared dead in 1995, was alive. The body we'd buried was Marcus Kowalski. I called Diane Kowalski. It was the hardest phone call I'd ever made, harder even than the call from Dr. Okonkwo, because I had to tell a mother that her son was really dead, had been dead all along, and we'd buried him in the wrong grave with the wrong name. She cried. I cried. We cried together over the phone, two women who'd been connected by tragedy 30 years ago and were connected again by a different kind of tragedy. She asked if she could come to Portland, if she could see the grave, if we could do it right this time. I said yes, of course, yes. Thomas, River, my son, stayed in Albuquerque for 6 more weeks to complete his treatment program. I flew back to be with him every weekend. We took walks in the garden. We sat together, and I showed him more photos. We talked about things he remembered and things he didn't. He told me about his life on the streets, about the first 10 years when he couldn't remember anything, wandering from place to place, staying in foster homes that never worked out, about the substance abuse that started when he was 15, trying to numb the confusion and fear, about the decades of homelessness, of survival, of just trying to make it through one more day. I listened. I didn't judge. I didn't try to fix anything. I just listened. And slowly, bit by bit, he started to remember. Not everything. Maybe not even most things, but pieces. He remembered the kitchen table. He remembered the feeling of folding paper. He remembered my voice singing. He remembered being loved. On a Tuesday in October, I picked him up from Clearwater. He walked out with a duffel bag containing everything he owned, which wasn't much. Some clothes Dr. Okonkwo had helped him acquire. His medications. A notebook where he'd been writing down his memories. We drove to the airport together. He was quiet, staring out the window at the New Mexico landscape. Are you scared? I asked. Terrified, he said. What if I can't do it? What if I relapse? What if I disappoint you? You won't disappoint me, I said. You survived. That's enough. We flew to Portland. It was his first time on an airplane that he could remember. He gripped the armrests during takeoff, his knuckles white. I held his hand. When we got to my house, the house he'd grown up in for the first 8 years of his life, he stood on the sidewalk for a long time, just staring. I remember the tree, he said, pointing to the big oak in the front yard. There was a tire swing. There was, I said. We took it down after you were gone, but we can put up a new one if you want. He smiled. It was the first real smile I'd seen from him. Inside, the house was exactly as he'd left it. I'd never redecorated Thomas's room, never changed anything. I'd kept it like a shrine, and maybe that was unhealthy, but right now I was grateful. Thomas, River, stood in the doorway of his childhood bedroom and cried. The dinosaur posters were still on the walls. The model T-Rex still sat on the dresser. The bed was still covered with the same space-themed comforter. I slept here, he said. I remember. The glow and the dark stars on the ceiling. I'd put them up when he was 5. He'd been afraid of the dark. That night, I made lemon bars, from the same recipe I'd used 30 years ago. I didn't ask if he wanted them. I just made them, the way I used to every Sunday. When they came out of the oven, golden and perfect and smelling like childhood, I cut one and put it on a plate and brought it to him. He was sitting at the kitchen table, the same table where he'd folded origami cranes, The same table where we'd eaten breakfast every morning for 8 years. He took a bite of the lemon bar. He closed his eyes. "I remember this," he said. "I remember this exactly." We sat together at that table and ate lemon bars and drank coffee and didn't talk about the 30 years in between. We just sat in that moment, in that kitchen, mother and son, found and finding. Later, I walked him upstairs to his room. He was exhausted from the flight, from the emotion, from everything. "Do you want me to stay?" I asked. "Until you fall asleep?" "Yeah," he said quietly, "if that's okay." He got into bed. Into the same bed he'd slept in as a child. He pulled the space-themed comforter up to his chin. I sat on the edge of the bed, the way I used to when he was little. "Will you sing it?" he asked. So I sang Moonlight and Roses. I sang it softly, slowly, the way I'd sung it 1,000 times before, the way I'd thought I'd never sing it again. And when I finished, he was asleep. I sat there for a while, watching him breathe, watching his face relax, watching him look almost peaceful. My son, my Thomas, my river, lost for 30 years, found again. Not the same, never the same, but here, alive, breathing. I stood up carefully, not wanting to wake him. I turned off the light. The glow in the dark stars on the ceiling began to shine. At the door, I looked back one more time. He was curled on his side, one hand tucked under the pillow, the way he used to sleep as a child. "Good night, sweetheart," I whispered. And for the first time in 30 years, I meant it. The next morning, I found him in the kitchen. He was sitting at the table, staring at a piece of colored paper, origami paper. I kept a pack in a drawer. I'd bought it years ago in a moment of grief and masochism, but I'd never been able to throw it away. "Can you show me?" he asked. "How to make the crane?" I sat down next to him. I took a sheet of paper. My hands remembered the folds even though it had been 3 decades. Square fold, triangle fold, petal fold, reverse fold, wings. I handed him the finished crane. He studied it. Then he took his own sheet of paper and tried. His fingers fumbled. The folds weren't quite right. He got frustrated, started over. I guided his hands, showing him the way I'd shown him when he was 7 years old. Together, we made a crane. He held it up to the light, turning it this way and that, examining every angle. "I did this before," he said. "I remember doing this. You made hundreds of them that summer. Can we make more?" So we did. We sat at that kitchen table for hours, folding paper, making cranes. Some were perfect, some were disasters, but we made them together. And when the sun started to set, the table was covered with paper birds. A whole flock of them, all different colors, all slightly imperfect. All proof that some things can be rebuilt, some things can be relearned. Some things, once lost, can be found again. Not the same, never the same, but real, present, here. Thomas picked up one of the cranes, a blue one with uneven wings. "This was always my favorite color," he said. "Blue like the lake." "Do you remember the lake?" I asked carefully. "Pieces," he said. "I remember the water being cold. I remember Marcus laughing. I remember going under and thinking I was going to die. And then I remember waking up somewhere else, somewhere I didn't recognize, and not knowing who I was or where I came from. You were in shock, traumatized. Your mind protected you by forgetting. I survived, and he didn't. Marcus should have survived. He had a family who loved him, a mom who never stopped looking for him. You had a family who loved you too, I said quietly. We just didn't know where to look." He was silent for a while, turning the blue crane over in his hands. "Are you angry?" he asked. "That I didn't find you sooner? That I forgot you?" "No," I said, and I meant it. You were a child. You were traumatized. You survived the only way you could. I'm not angry. I'm grateful you're here now. even though I'm not the son you remember? You're exactly the son I have, I said, and that's enough. That night, we had dinner together. Just the two of us. I made spaghetti because I remembered it was one of his favorite meals as a kid. He ate like he was starving. Maybe he was. Maybe he'd been starving for 30 years and was just now realizing it. This is good, he said between bites. Really good. It's just spaghetti. No, he said. It's more than that. After dinner, we washed dishes together. I washed, he dried. It was domestic and ordinary and perfect. I talked to Dr. Okonkwo today, he said. She wants me to continue therapy here in Portland. She gave me some names of people who specialize in PTSD and recovered memory. That's good, I said. Do you want me to go with you? To the appointments? Would you? Of course. He was quiet for a moment, drying a plate with careful concentration. I'm going to disappoint you, he said. Eventually, I'm going to mess up. I'm going to relapse or have a breakdown or do something that reminds you I'm not the perfect kid from your memories. I know, I said, and I'm going to say the wrong thing or push too hard or not push hard enough. We're both going to mess up, but we'll figure it out. How can you be so sure? Because I've already lost you once, I said. I'm not losing you again. The weeks turned into months. Thomas, River, my son by whatever name, stayed in his childhood bedroom and slowly started to remember. He remembered the cat we'd had, a tabby named Mr. Whiskers. He remembered his third-grade teacher, Mrs. Patterson. He remembered the way the house smelled when I baked cookies. He also had bad days. Days when the PTSD was overwhelming. Days when he woke up screaming from nightmares. Days when he couldn't get out of bed. On those days, I would sit with him. I wouldn't try to fix it or make it better. I would just be there. We had Thanksgiving together. Just the two of us. I made turkey and stuffing and pumpkin pie. He helped, his hands clumsy but earnest. Did we used to do this? He asked, carefully peeling potatoes. Have Thanksgiving together? Every year, I said. You loved Thanksgiving, especially the pie. I think I still love pie, he said, and smiled. In December, we drove to Riverwood Cemetery together. He needed to see it, needed to understand. We stood in front of the grave marked Thomas Ryan Chen, the grave I'd visited for 30 years, the grave that held Marcus Kowalski's body. I'm sorry, Thomas said. I'm sorry Marcus died. I'm sorry I survived and he didn't. I'm sorry you spent 30 years mourning the wrong person. You're not the wrong person, I said. You're my son. Marcus was also loved. His death was a tragedy. But your life is not a tragedy. Your survival is not something to apologize for. We stood there for a while in silence. Then Thomas knelt down and placed a blue origami crane on the headstone. For Marcus, he said. For my friend. The next week, Diane Kowalski came to Portland. We met at the cemetery. It was December 15th. Cold and gray and raining, the way it always rains in Portland in December. She looked older than I remembered, grayer, more worn, but her eyes were the same pain I'd carried for 30 years. We stood together in front of the grave. Thank you, she said, for taking care of him, for giving him a proper burial, even though you thought he was yours. I'm so sorry, I said. I'm so sorry we didn't know. How could you have known? She wiped her eyes. They were both wearing the same shirt. They were the same size. It made sense at the time. We're going to change the headstone, I told her, to Marcus's name, and you can come visit whenever you want, for as long as you want. She nodded, crying too hard to speak. Thomas had stayed in the car, giving us privacy. But now he got out and walked slowly toward us. Diane looked at him. Really looked at him. You were Thomas, she said. You were his best friend. I don't remember much, Thomas said. But I remember Marcus. I remember we were going to build a treehouse together. We had plans, drawings. He drew those plans the night before you went to the lake, Diane said. I found them in his room after. I kept them all these years. He was a good friend, Thomas said. He deserved better than this. So did you, Diane said. You both did. We stood there in the rain, the three of us connected by tragedy and loss and the strange mercy of time. I'd like to stay in touch, Diane said to me. If that's okay, I'd like to know how he's doing. Of course, I said. Of course. She left after an hour. Thomas and I stayed a while longer. We sat in my car with the heater running, watching the rain. Are you okay? I asked. I don't know, he said. I don't know if I'll ever be okay. But I'm here. I'm alive. That has to count for something. It counts for everything? I said. On Christmas Eve, my sister came to visit. She brought her family, her husband, and 3 kids. Thomas hadn't seen them since before he disappeared. They were strangers to him now. It was awkward at first. The kids stared at him with wide eyes. My sister didn't know what to say. Her husband kept making uncomfortable small talk. But then we had dinner, and Thomas told a story about something funny that had happened at his therapy appointment, and my sister laughed, and the tension broke. After dinner, the kids asked Thomas to play a video game with them. He said yes, even though he'd never played video games before, or at least, not that he remembered. He was terrible at it. The kids found this hilarious. They spent an hour teaching him the controls, shouting instructions, celebrating when he finally managed to complete a level. I watched from the doorway, and I thought about all the Christmas Eves we'd missed, all the family dinners and holidays and ordinary moments. I couldn't get those back. None of us could. But we had this moment. We had right now. That night, after everyone left, Thomas and I sat in the living room. The Christmas tree lights were on, casting a warm glow over everything. That was nice, he said, having family here. They're your family too, I said. They want to get to know you. I don't know if I'll ever feel normal, he said, if I'll ever fit into regular life. You don't have to fit, I said. You just have to be. He was quiet for a while, staring at the Christmas tree. I got you something, he said. For Christmas, it's not much. I didn't have money for anything big, but I made it. He pulled something from his pocket and handed it to me. It was an origami crane, a perfect origami crane, made from red paper, and underneath it, written in careful letters, were the words, "Thank you for finding me." I held it in my hands and cried. I didn't find you, I said. You found your way back. We found each other, he said. On Christmas morning, I woke up early. I went downstairs and made coffee and lemon bars. By the time Thomas came down, the house smelled like lemon and sugar and home. We opened presents. I'd gotten him some clothes, some books, a new phone, practical things, things he needed. He seemed overwhelmed by it all, like he wasn't sure he deserved it. It's just Christmas, I said. This is what families do. I'm not used to families, he said. You'll get used to this one. Later, we went for a walk. The rain had stopped and the sun was trying to break through the clouds. We walked through the neighborhood, past houses decorated with lights and wreaths. I used to walk these streets, Thomas said. I used to ride my bike up and down this sidewalk. I can almost remember it. You had a blue bike with a bell, I said. You rang that bell constantly, drove the neighbors crazy. He laughed. I wish I remembered that. You will, I said. Little by little, you'll remember. And the things you don't remember, I'll tell you about. We'll piece it together. We walked for a long time, past the elementary school he'd attended, past the park where he used to play, past the library where he'd gotten the origami book. When we got back to the house, he stopped on the front porch. Thank you, he said, for not giving up on me, for believing I could be alive even when it seemed impossible. I didn't give up, I said. I just didn't know where to look, but I never stopped loving you, not for a single day in 30 years. He hugged me then. Not the way a man hugs his mother, but the way a child does. Desperate and clinging and needing to be held. I held him. I held my son, my Thomas, my River, my child who'd been lost and was found. And I thought about all the mothers and fathers and families who'd lost children and never got them back, all the unsolved cases and the closed files and the headstones that would never be corrected. I thought about Diane Kowalski, visiting a grave with the right name now, but still missing her son forever. I thought about luck and chance and the impossible things that sometimes happen. I thought about origami cranes and lemon bars and lullabies, and I held my son, and I knew we were the lucky ones. That night, we made dinner together. He was getting better at cooking, more confident. He made the salad while I grilled chicken. We ate at the kitchen table, the same table where everything had started and ended and started again. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what to do, about the future." "You don't have to decide anything right away," I said. "You can take your time." "I know, but I want to do something that matters, something that helps people like me, people who are lost." "What are you thinking?" "Maybe I could work with homeless outreach, or with kids in foster care, people who need someone who understands what it's like to be forgotten." "I think you'd be good at that," I said, "when you're ready." "I might never be ready," he said, "but I want to try anyway." After dinner, we folded origami together. We'd been doing this most nights. It had become our ritual, our way of connecting. Tonight, we made a whole flock of cranes, blues and reds and yellows and greens. We folded them carefully, precisely, and hung them from strings attached to the ceiling. Soon the kitchen was full of paper birds, turning slowly in the air currents, catching the light. "Why cranes?" Thomas asked. "Why were they always my favorite?" "There's a Japanese legend," I said. "If you fold 1,000 origami cranes, you get to make a wish." "Did you ever fold 1,000? "No," I said, "but I wished anyway. Every day for 30 years I wished for you to come home." He looked at me with tears in his eyes. "I'm home now," he said. "You're home now," I agreed. And we sat together in our kitchen full of paper cranes, mother and son, lost and found, broken and healing, and we folded one more bird, for luck, for hope, for all the impossible things that sometimes come true.